everyone. Welcome to the third annual JQT Hanukkah Hotties. My name is Carmel Tanaka. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the founder and executive director of JQT Vancouver, a volunteer-run Jewish queer and trans nonprofit dedicated to queering Jewish space and Jewifying queer space in Vancouver, BC, on the ancestral and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. For Hanukkah this year, we are being generously supported by Creating Accessible Neighborhoods, an organization that advocates for and educates about disabled people with intersecting identities. You can learn more about this fantastic organization doing amazing work at canbc.org. Our community partner this year is LGBTQ at the J, located in the Miles Nadal JCC in Toronto. And for each candle of the holiday, we have a Hanukkah Hottie joining us to light their hanukkiah, or perhaps share another tradition and chit-chat about the wonderful things they do in life for the duration of the candles burning. For our first and to kick off Hanukkah Hotties, we are joined by Erin-Kate Escobar, a queer, non-binary, tiny fat, Latine, and white Jewish person of color. They use they, them pronouns and work to build more inclusive spaces where people can thrive through developing and implementing DEI strategies, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion, that include healing and anti-racist practices. Erin-Kate has previously developed DEI initiatives in STEM communities, including NASA and Nobel Prize-winning science projects. These days, you can more often find them partnering with small businesses, museums, schools, and nonprofits to create more diverse and equitable team environments. Tuning in from Los Angeles, please welcome Erin-Kate.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello. Lovely to be here.
I'm so happy you are. And what a joy to have you be our first Hanukkah Hottie for 2022. Are you ready for Hanukkah?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think so. Yeah. I love an opportunity to engage in ritual. So I'm always looking for how are we gonna do this? So Hanukkah rolls around and I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do this.
I love it. I wanted to roll back on how you identify yourself because I thought it was really cool and I had a learning opportunity myself with the specific word Latine as opposed to Latinx. And I would love it if you could elaborate a little bit more on why Latine.
Yeah. So language is constantly shifting and changing. I think that's part of the joy and beauty of this work. And um, so in trying to find ways to non-binary languages that are often, making femme and masc assumptions about who we're talking about, there was a movement to change it went through many iterations. So from Latino with an O at the end, which is the masculine version, which is what you refer to everyone in a room if there is one man, to Latin at sign, and it was like an A and an O together. And so Latinao or Latinat was what was going on, maybe the early aughts. And then I feel like non-binary literature picked up and there was a little more momentum and the X got added at the end, Latinx. And then there was pushback saying, Latinx is not exactly how Spanish speakers would say the X at the end or do the X. And so there is a movement to say Latine and make the E at the end a way that we non-binary a ethnic identity that typically has a gendered ending.
I love
So
that.
yeah. And sometimes I put like what is that? Like an accent over it, Latine, so that people know it's not just like Latine or Latine or Latine, but I don't know if there's a wrong or right way to pronounce it. I think, language is ever evolving. So yeah, Latine is how I say it. And I believe it will change again, but I'm down for this version, this iteration right now. So thanks for asking about that.
Yeah, and it totally makes sense to, make those changes fit also within the language and what it would naturally be, as opposed to just, outsiders coming in and changing the language for a community. There's a big difference there. Shall we light our candles?
Let's do it.
Big reveal. Dun, 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 dun,
Ah,
dun, 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 dun. We both have yellow candles.
love
That
that.
wasn't planned.
Not planned.
Great. So we're gonna kick it off. Would you like to do a blessing? Would you
I'm
like
happy
me
to
to
do a
help with
blessing.
any blessings?
The blessing I've typically done has just been like standard Hanukkah blessing with the masculine language. And today you had an offering of non-binary language that clearly just excites my heart with joy. And I would love if you'd be willing to teach the non-binary one, if we could light our Hanukkiahs with non-binary
Yes,
Hanukkah
I
brightness.
would be more than happy to. I sent you the link, right? So you've got that in front of you. Um, so I'm gonna try to not burn down the house while doing this. But I
Same.
will light my shamash so that there is some fire while I'm lighting. So are you ready?
I'm
Okay,
ready.
3, 1. Woo. Okay. Oh my gosh, it didn't work. I have to do that again. This is just to normalize the difficulty it is sometimes to light candles. All right. Ba Ruche ate yain chaim asher kitchenu b'mitzvotei v'tzivenu le'adlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch Atiyah Ein Chaim She'aste Nisim Lehori Moteinu Bayamim Ha'em Bazman Hazem. Baruch Atiyah Ein Chaim Shehehiyanu Vekimenu Vehigiyanu Lazman Hazeh. Amen.
I feel like doing the Shehechianu after that. I just learned so many things.
Was that your first time hearing non-binary Hebrew?
It might be. It might be.
Like, had you heard of it before and this was like your first time hearing it, or
I've
like
heard of
really
it
hearing?
before and it's been referenced, and I can think of like one other time it was said aloud. I've seen it said as like, there's an option for non-binary Hebrew on page, but then they sing the not non-binary one.
Right. Right. Well,
Yeah,
I reached out to the creators of nonbinaryhebrew.com. Definitely check it out. We even
cool.
had one of them come on to talk about how to queer Hebrew. It was actually queer Jewish languages in general. So it was many different forms of languages that Jewish people speak all around the world and the queering of them. And it was just really cool to, hear the story behind it, get a little bit of a grammar lesson. When I first started to create these blessings, which I'll put a link, well, actually, y'all can find out on jqtvancouver.ca/resources. There's an inclusive blessings button. And if you click there, then you'll see ones for Shabbat, Pesach, and Hanukkah. But when we were creating them, I got help from a rabbi in California, actually north of the Bay Area, to do them properly and make sure that they're correct with all the nekudot and all the vowels. Wow, I can't even talk. Vowels. And I will tell you that initially I struggled with it. I mean, I speak Hebrew, and the traditional form of Hebrew, the masculine form for these blessings. So yeah, it didn't roll off the tongue, and I couldn't sing the melodies for it. But then as the years go by and the more I use and practice non-binary Hebrew, it's just become much more easy. And then now I've learned how to do the melody as well. And now it's fine. I love it.
That's so cool. And it's such a, I mean, that feels like the process for learning how to use they, them in English too. It's really hard at first. You kind of mix it up. You're not quite sure how to, I hear a lot of people are like, they then went to the store. And I'm like, oh, you only have to use one of those. They went to the store. But like, you know, it's a fumbling of our language until we practice it and use it and try it out and mess it up a lot of times till we, yeah, feel a little more confident with it.
Right. And I do have to say that it's really interesting using non-binary Hebrew in different places. In North America, it's much more common, especially in the queer and trans Jewish community. But here in Israel, where I currently am, I'm visiting with my mom. She's originally from Israel, which is home to many indigenous communities, including but not limited to Jews, Palestinians, Druze, Bedouin, and then there's subgroups within each of those as well. When I talk about non-binary Hebrew, I use there's a lot of confusion, and it actually hears for them, I think it's more of like a mistake that I've said something incorrect, as opposed to actually there's an intention behind what I've just said.
Mhm.
But I think it hasn't really quite come here yet. It's more of a North American Hebrew speaking Jewish thing.
Mhm.
I do know that there's been attempts with some of the endings, how to write it in the script, but slowly but surely.
Yeah, it's a process.
And speaking of processes, being you is also a process. And I'm currently here working on the Japanese oral history project, my documentary. And this is how we connected because, do you want to take it away? Do you want to tell us how we know each other?
Yeah, we connected through a longtime family friend, Leola Katz, who I grew up with. Her kids are similar aged kids to me and my sibling. And um, I think she recently got connected with you for the Japanese project. And she was like, you have to meet EK. You're really going to get along. And like, I think we sent one text and it was like a picture of my cat on my desk. And we have been, I consider you a friend ever since.
Ever
Uh,
since then. Well, this is my
and
first time
we
actually seeing you.
celebrated, yeah, being queerdo, multiracial, um, yeah, fat people navigating this world.
Right?
So we're gonna pass through LA and we were gonna go shopping at the rad, like really cool local shops. It didn't work out. COVID, like mishmash happened, but I hold in
I'm
my
really
heart.
bummed about that, to be honest with you. I was really looking forward to meeting you. You're definitely my kin and community, and I just really wanted to make out with your cat.
Yeah.
But COVID had other plans.
Mhm.
Is your cat going to make a guest appearance?
I know I was looking. He's not here right now, as he was cuddled
Oh,
up on
he'll
the bed.
come.
Maybe he'll hear the call.
Brilliant. Well, one of the things that we connected on is both of us do DEI work, and I'd love to hear how did you get into that? Um, what's did you grow up thinking, oh, one day I'm going to be a DEI consultant, or was it a different journey?
Yeah, great. I love this journey. So I grew up in Northern California, so like Ohlone land. And I went to school and I was super involved in everything leadership and everything activist. And I thought I wanted to be a politician because that's how you make change. I'd been a part of like helping create a teen center. I'd been on like the school board as a student representative. I was like, government's the way, excuse me, student government is the way to go. And this is how I'm going to be a change maker. So I went to college and I studied political science. And I went to DC and did the whole intern in DC, work on the Hill. I didn't work on the Hill. I worked for a nonprofit working on habeas corpus. And I basically filed paperwork in a basement every day and cried a little because it was so painful to show up and just be put
Bottom
in the
of the hill on the outskirts.
Yeah. But I worked in a lot of different legislatures' office. I worked in the mayor's office when Gavin Newsom was mayor of San Francisco. I read his books and typed up his notes of what he took in his books. And by the end of 4 years of studying politics, I was like, wow, politics is not ready for queer, mixed race people of color. This is intense. It was a really intense environment to be in. I just like figured out I'm a part of all these cajillions of boxes and I want to like, I'm trying to break down binaries and break down the labels, and everything in politics pointed to like, how do you repackage yourself to be a delicious, delectable morsel that the public can consume and love and sponsor and uphold and uplift and, and tear apart too. And while in college, I also became the first Jewish Studies and Social Justice minor. It was a new minor on campus. And I became the first graduate of that program. And I got really involved in another program called Abraham's Vision, which was all about American Jews and American Palestinians coming together and doing conflict transformation work. It was a fellowship where we went to the Balkans and we studied ethno-national religious conflict in the Balkans. And we sat and we did dialogue and we had amazing speakers come, and it was an intense and incredible experience. So at the same time as pursuing my dream of politics, I thought, I really love this work, this dialogue work. I really love creating space to think about the possibilities of how all of these identities come together and where we learned them and how they've created these beings that we are, and then created the challenges, the blessings, the beautiful things, and the conflicts that are happening internal to us that become external. I studied Middle Eastern politics and I learned Arabic. And after college, I was like, I'm going to move to the Middle East and find a really cool NGO and work on, conflict transformation and dialogue work somewhere. And so I moved to Jordan under the guise of the Worldwide Organization of Organic Farms. And I traveled around Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and Palestine, woofing. So working on organic farms in exchange for room and board. With a friend who had come with me, and we had an amazing time and many adventures. And I think it was around month 4, I was like, yeah, guess who else isn't ready for queer, mixed race, people of color who are American?
Literally the whole world.
Oh my gosh, I have like 0 cultural capital here. I am like a giant colonizer. I don't speak Arabic very well. I know Hebrew from going to temple school and from learning prayers, but I don't know how to speak it. I can read it, but I have no idea what it means. Except for the words now that it has in common with Arabic that I had learned. Then there was crossover episodes that things made sense. But so I came back and I was like, okay, well, that was a really enlightening experience. I'm going to work in nonprofits because I want to make the world a better place. And so I started working for nonprofits. Actually, it was an after-school gardening organization, so it fit well with my having woofed. And that nonprofit was a tiny place. And I started as a part-time volunteer coordinator. And after a year and a half, I was like overseeing all of our programs, overseeing all of our teachers, running our after-school programs, applying for grants, writing our grant proposals, trying to find all the lost paperwork that had been lost between like the 3 EDs before that had a really high turnover, where we had to kind of like overpromise everything we were going to do because we were in competition with all the other nonprofits, all doing the same amazing good work. And I was like, the water line just kept rising and I was sleeping at the office and I was like, I have to work harder for all of these things. And I used to ride my bike to work and I was like, one morning I was like, oh, I'd rather maybe get hit by a car on my bike than go to work.
No.
I was like, okay, you're 22 EK. Like, that's not how you want to feel when you go to work in the morning. It's time to change. It's time for a change. You can't do this. You can't run at this level of octane without,
support and breaks and mental health care. But this is the world of the nonprofit world. And as you were describing, I was like, I know exactly what that's like.
Right.
And it's been really interesting, especially with JQT, which is completely volunteer run. I'm a volunteer ED. I have to take breaks. I'm being pulled left and right in so many different directions, but the truth is it's not sustainable. And it's not how I pay rent in Vancouver. So, but now you're a big time consultant. You're super cool. Tell me
Yeah.
more about your
So
work.
fast forward out of nonprofit world, went back to school, got my master's in education and wanted to work on college campuses and like multicultural centers. And I did that for a while. And then I left in 2020 as the George Floyd uprisings were happening. And it was really clear I was never going to get a raise at my job. And I was just going to be asked to do more and more and more diversity, equity, inclusion education. And I was like, okay, that's not sustainable either. To always do more with less and then constantly have to respond to what's going on in our world. And so I left to start my own consulting business in diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, accessibility. And it has been so juicy to get into learning how to run my own business, be an entrepreneur, but do it with a critical lens of rest being at the core
And
of how
boss.
I do my work and wanting that from my clients too. So every single client I work with, I'm not about like, you got to do more, pile on. I'm like, whoa, let's do a deep intake and then like strip it back and then think about really small micro shifts that are going to in the long term add up. And some of those micro shifts are just like a microaggression is a really big deal. A micro shift can be a really big deal. So working with them to think about how do we sustainably implement this work and engage in this at a pace that is also sustainable, because we do not benefit from the hurry up, this should have been done last week mentality that is a part of white supremacist culture norms just raining down and telling us that we are in this urgent space where we have to operate at this level of this pace that is not sustainable. So it's been hard. It's a hard unraveling to try to, in multiple pandemic times, figure out how to move slower, how to do this work in really thoughtful ways that aren't a part of reinforcing this very same oppression we're trying to challenge with the very same means that we are trying to challenge it. So a lot of
In many
slowing.
ways, what you're describing is this Jewish urgency to fix the world. It's part of our anxiety.
Yeah, that is some deep ancestral knowledge
Trauma right there.
that, yeah, trauma that we're working through, definitely. Like tikkun olam has been a part of my like essays I've written from a very young age as to like why I want to engage in meaningful work. And Risma Menachem's work, my grandmother's hands, he does a lot of somatics into learning about like family, lineage, ancestral trauma, and how we carry that with us. And a lot of work around how do we acknowledge it? How do we start to notice it as something we're carrying that might not actually be ours, that might be fueling exactly like the oppression that we are trying to challenge, because it is deep in some Jewish ancestral bones to like not stop. We must work for justice. We must make change and it is not our job to finish it, but it is our job to be a part of it. And how do we do that I want to push for slower ways.
Can you give us an example of what a small micro change has been that has been for you something that has, you said that a microaggression can really weigh heavy on people, but then a micro change can open doors. I'd be curious to hear an example of one micro change that impacted you
Yeah.
positively.
A few that are coming to mind. I think I guess it depends what you consider micro. There's the changing on a form, what people have access to. So changing on a form, why you're asking for sex and gender, or if you don't need sex or gender at all, leave it off of the form. Like something that you
Don't
could say.
data hoard.
But you could also say at a lot of organizations, that's a lot of bureaucratic work you might have to go through to change that. So that for some smaller organizations might be a micro shift, and for others, that could be a really big undertaking to unravel. But that could be an example. I worked with a really cool organization where they really wanted to know there's constantly terrible things happening in the world, and they constantly wanted to respond to them. I think this is a challenge many organizations are facing. Every day there is terrible news out there in the world, and how do we show that we are listening, we care, we understand, and we have a mission and a vision, and this is what we're trying to accomplish, and this is how this connects to it. And we did some deep values work to re-enliven and talk about what are these words that they have been inherited over many years. You inherit values when you come into an organization. What did they actually mean to the people working there now? And then how can we take those and make decisions from the place of those values, instead of feeling like we have to like put up the shields and respond to every possible thing that's happening? How do we continue to ground into these meaningful values that guide us in what we're doing, and reshare them and talk about how they are affected by what's happening in the world? We don't have to pretend like it's not happening. We also don't have to send out an announcement every time something happens, but we can create those spaces within our organization that we can respond to what's happening, but from a place of why that is core and essential to who we are and what we're trying to accomplish, instead of just like I feel like this is people responding to the world outside. They're like frantic and manic.
But it also, not to cut you off, but I'm also dealing with this as well with clients. I feel in many ways it's performative. You copy and paste something that another organization newsletter has just been sent out. And you're like, oh, that's great. I'll put that in as well. Or you see it online in, social media, or say it's like a special heritage month, or it's awareness month, or awareness day, week, whatever it is. And then if you're just copying and pasting, how does that actually make a difference for those who work for the organization? Also your outward messaging. It becomes irrelevant.
Yeah. And so like we gotta weave a more thorough net that is like deeper and connected to something that deeply matters, because all these nonprofits and organizations and even corporations which are considered people, have values, right? That are like deeply entrenched. So I'm always pushing for like, how do we take those values and operate from that place of shift and change and care? And if those values aren't aligned, like, can we change them?
Mhm. Exactly.
um,
You know, some of them are archaic and do need to change. I've got a question for you. In your work, whether in the, I don't know how long you've been working as a consultant, but I would assume it's a few years now. Um, what would you say is missing in the DEI work when it comes to awareness on various different issues? You know, what's trendy, what isn't trendy, what's not being talked about that needs to be talked about?
yeah. Mm. So much of this work, diversity, equity, and inclusion work, is actually about that healing work, that self-learning. I know it's about structural change too. We also can do that, but um, hurt people, right? And if we're hurting and we haven't done this work to understand why things are the way they are, and have that time to explore the complexity. This is something I love, is like I deeply value complexity. And that's a really hard thing for a lot of people to hold on to, the both and the not pitting us against each other, not pitting solving homelessness against space discovery and investment in, you know, non-linear thinking. Like these, we need those both, but it sucks that we live in a world that's like, fund homelessness, don't fund space. I'm talking about my own self saying that at one point, right? Where I'm like, we have to take care of people here on Earth before we try to go colonize the next planet. But I'm also like, that's not fair. Like, we have to create space for people who are deeply entrenched and interested in exploration of something totally different. We know how to solve homelessness, but like, we're deeply entrenched in the system of capitalism, which is at its root tied to slavery, which at its root is racism. And so we're
Mm-hmm,
in
mm-hmm.
this system that every single day we're being asked to function in a way that ignores our human needs, that reinforces the fact that we are supposed to be productive all the time, 24/7, 365 days a year, and that rest and time off is only to come back and be able to do more. And so, we are deep in this cycle of reinforcing the very same things we're trying to change. So that healing piece and the slowing down to realize all of us are a part of this pretty big moving machine that is reinforcing that we have to do things faster, harder, better, stronger than ever before, instead of, whoa, like relearning that rest could just be rest for rest's sake, and that it's not about resting for greater productivity. Like,
Or failure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But that's hard because every organization you work for is trying to make the money that they're trying to make to take care of their
right.
staff that they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
hold on to, especially nonprofit schools, small organizations. Like, they're trying to do the best they can by the people who work for them, who are mission driven and interested in it. So it's a really hard cycle we're caught in.
It is. And also, there is a dark side to DEI work in that it is a consultancy and money is becoming readily available now for positions in different organizations for a DEI specialist. And it's like the new trend to have someone who's helping internally in an organization, but also like in um, the film and TV and animation industry, you know, representation in front of the camera, behind the camera. And it is capitalist as well. I mean, like it's it's really interesting. I actually struggled, and I think we talked about this at one point. I struggled to identify as a DEI consultant. I really stayed far away from that, but was told by many people that the work that I do from JQT with LGBTQ inclusion in Jewish spaces is in and of itself a DEI initiative. My cross-cultural walking tours, which brings together many communities, the early start of Vancouver's immigrant and Indigenous histories, is also a DEI initiative of sorts. So I guess I didn't label myself, quote unquote, as a DEI specialist, but that I was doing the work that people apparently say already are. But I
Yes.
honestly still have imposter syndrome. I still don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't. Do you struggle with that at all?
Yeah, it's complicated. I struggle with being a part of a field that is also super unregulated. When I'm like, I don't also want to add regulations because that also sounds problematic, but
Right.
so many things are classified as diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and justice work. And then we have to figure out who's doing it well and who's doing it in a way that challenges the oppression and doesn't reinforce it, because you can be doing diversity, equity, inclusion work that completely reinforces the status quo and re-traumatizes people and reinforces binaries. I see it all the time. I come in, now we're at a point where like I am the consultant after the last consultant that they had.
Oy, 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 oy.
And you're like, okay, yeah.
I'm going to say something that's perhaps unsavory, maybe not quite PC, but I feel that I saw this a lot, especially during the pandemic. We were all trying to make some money, trying to, we lost a lot of revenue. And I saw a lot of people of color who I absolutely love and adore, who are great people, pick up gigs as consultants. And all of a sudden, overnight, they were DEI consultants. And I was shocked a little bit initially at this because it's not like, even I was saying, I haven't done training, I haven't gone to DEI school, I don't have the certificate. But my projects kind of speak for themselves, but I still didn't feel quite comfortable saying that I can do this work. But I don't know. I don't judge anyone. I mean, I am an ESFJ on the Myers-Briggs, so maybe I do. But it was interesting. I'm gonna just call it because I saw that and I'm like, but hey-oh, this is not your line of work.
Level of certification or education that prepares you to do this work. I have taken the free certification courses. I have talked to people who've taken the $10,000, the $5,000, the $15,000 DEI certification courses. And yeah, it doesn't prove anything, because then when I ask people to answer a question about it, I might completely disagree. It's fine to disagree and have different ways to go about solving something. There's 20 answers to one question. But when I hear something that they say that like automatically reinforces a level of oppression, I'm like, there's no about a certification or education that can prepare you for this. There's people with the life experience who also not necessarily good at consulting for this. And then there's people without the life experience who have done a lot of the work, who could be great at this and who are great at this and have been doing, white allyship work for decades and teaching people about it. And I feel like we're in a wild west of diversity, equity, and inclusion work right now. Like there's a new frontier. Everyone's going out there trying to make that money that is out there to try to do this. And so many places just want something performative that makes them look good. And a lot of people can help hang lights around the office, and shine the windows.
You just said it's a lot about education and teaching, and not every teacher that I've had over the years is a great teacher. Some of them have fantastic knowledge, but don't really know how to disseminate that, so that you know, it can be absorbed by the people who they're professing to. So I do think that you do need to, at some point, have some sort of facilitating skills, how to work a room, so that you can get your message across. I was on a LGBTQ panel that shall not be named. Various different people were on it, of the spectrum of the POC world. And I, made mention that one of the things that I'm not seeing in DEI work, especially when we talk about racism, and discrimination, is anti-Semitism.
Mm.
I was shot down when I said that, as someone who's Jewish, I also just want to recognize that in addition to all the other isms, that we should also be adding to the menu anti-Semitism, so that people have basic knowledge of what that is. And I was told that has no place in DEI work, which I found quite challenging. And it was live. And I'm like, how am I going to say this? And I really didn't want to get into Impression Olympics as to who's fared worse than the other, because that's not my jam at all. But that was really hard. Have you come across that at all in your work as well?
Yeah, I think I really appreciate you bringing that up, because anti-Semitism is a part of diversity, equity, inclusion work. All the isms live in this work. There's no taking one out and saying this one's not like the others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it is in this work, there's a lot of people reinforcing oppression in ways that
Right.
they don't necessarily mean to, but it's
Mm-hmm.
happening. So in that moment, it's like, okay, wow, like we've got a systemic injustice happening and we are watching it happen and we're here for it. And what do we do in this moment? What do we do long term? I think a lot of people traditionally doing DEI work, I mean, there are many Jewish people who are engaged in social justice work. And diversity, equity, inclusion is a space that you see some Jewish people, but I think there are many people who don't know a lot about anti-Semitism who are doing diversity, equity, inclusion work. Just like there's a lot of people doing DEI work who don't know a lot about accessibility. There's a lot of people who do accessibility who don't understand about racism. And it's the same problem where we lump everything together and then we try to say one person can solve for all the isms. And it's like, woof, woof.
No,
Whose stuff is that?
that's not how that works. The world is super diverse.
We have to do this from so many angles, and there's no one
Yeah.
person that embodies and encompasses a deep understanding of every single one of those identities, though many people hold many of those intersecting identities.
Right. I was like, as people who hold multiple identities, we even acknowledge as diverse as we are, we can't possibly do everything. Well,
Yeah.
how does Latine and Jewishness and queerness and non-binariness, uh, one, dive into your work, but also into your personal life, and how are you celebrating all of those identities these days?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's a lot. There's a lot of different ways it comes into being. I think a lot of it has to do with finding community around those identities, and then communities that can hold multiples of those identities. I think this was a lesson I learned in college when I joined every club of every identity I belonged to, but there was no club where like you could just be a whole human being. And so I feel like, so I'm thinking like right now, an example of this is like these Hanukkah candles are created by a wonderful person called Narrow Bridge Candles. That's like a queer, disabled person who makes candles. That's all about Palestinian freedom and Palestinians getting to exist, and creates Hanukkah candles and ritual spaces for the depth and breadth of something else to exist. Those are narrow bridge candles, and that feels like it roots like my Hanukkah celebration in supporting queer disabled artists, in building movements, in thinking about how this holiday, while not having a lot of spiritual meaning, like maybe Passover has to it, it feels a little bit more like a Cinco de Mayo, like we're celebrating a battle that was won and some miracles that came out of it, but it's been co-opted by Christmas in the same way that like Cinco de Mayo has been co-opted by like Corona and limes and chips. Um,
Right.
we have to kind of fight for what does this holiday mean to me, and how am I going to celebrate it in a way that feels meaningful if I want to. And can I find other people who want to do that too? And I think like the first synagogue that I found when I lived in San Francisco was Sha'ar Zahav, and it was an LGBTQ synagogue, and it was run by a queer rabbi. And when I left San Francisco and moved to grad school, I bought their Siddur. I've never owned a prayer book in my life at what was at the age of 24. And I bought a prayer book because it was like the same cost as a textbook. I was like, $80 before might have seemed expensive, but I was buying textbooks for grad school, and I was like, a textbook I'm never going to open again is going to cost me $80. And I'm going to buy this prayer book. And literally, like you can see, like I reference it all the time. It's like the most, it's like a little coveted home when I need to write a card, when I need to feel soothing, when I need some like reassurance, when I don't know what to say to someone else. Like this has so many beautiful daily, weekly, cyclical prayers, for friends going through menopause. It has a prayer for menopause, for name changes, for being non-binary, for living in the in-between. And then the prayers are written by queer people and people who live through the AIDS epidemic, and people who are praying for caregivers and for people with AIDS. And it's like a history book, a queer book, a Jewish book. So this like really opened my eyes to experiencing like prayer and meaning making in a way that like I felt really included in it. And now I feel like I'm exploring that in I don't know if you've ever heard of the Jewish Studio Project, but they are an art making and Torah study organization. So they lead you, it's all online, and they lead you through Torah study prayer, and you read a little bit of Torah, and then everyone makes art. And it's like 100 people on Zoom, all with their cameras down on whatever kind of art they're making. Some of it's everything. And then you come back and you share a little bit about that art, and you think about how this blessing of creativity is bestowed upon us, and what we are creating is a part of, this higher power, a God, a way of thinking about how the universe works. And that's been a really beautiful space because it's multifaceted and about play and creating in a way that sometimes I feel like a lot of traditional Judaism or going into Jewish spaces can feel really intimidating, and I might feel like I have to prove myself, and I feel like I have to like bring my tallis or prove that I know Hebrew or that I went to Hebrew school in some way, or pretend like I didn't to be a part of the cool kids, or like figure out what part of your story is relevant to share or not, to be able to chameleon in that space. And as like
you can bring your Siddur book, the one that you just have with all the tabs, be like, there you go.
Right, like what kind of cred do I need to be here? And so I think that sometimes like this is really beautiful, but like in the creation of online spaces where we get to be like our whole selves, there is something where like it's less about proving something and more about like sitting with what is, and exploring how fun that is to be like, what's your journey like? And like my journey to Jewishness and being Latino was like my mom is a little Jewish German woman, but her parents didn't engage in temple and synagogue because of anti-Semitism and because of Zionism. And so my sister made a friend in elementary school and I invited her to temple school. My sister went, and then I wanted to be like my sister, so I went, and like we became a little more traditionally Jewish when we all went to temple school. And then I banned Christmas in our house because capitalism, and we were Jews. And I was 10 years old. And I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing, really? But, I have this half Catholic Latino side of my family, and I have a Jewish, German, French, Hungarian side of the family. And growing up, I thought I could be half Jewish and half Catholic, just like I'm half white and half Latino. Like I thought I could be some of each. So it's been a great journey to celebrating none of those being, something that you're any part of anything. I am a whole human being and I am multifaceted. And part of the celebration of today and every day is like getting to be that and play with that and meet incredible people and engage with really cool communities and exist and rest as a way to resist the temptation to have to always do more.
Mm. Amen to that. That was beautiful. I don't know if you were noticing what was happening here. There was a beautiful, and it just went. I'm putting it where my black hair so you can see.
Gorgeous.
Just
That's my favorite part.
Clearly, my Hanukkah candles are not as well made as yours from Narrowbridge.
These are beeswax, hand dipped. They're more like a 45 to 50-minute candle.
I was like, that ain't no 20 to 25.
I know. I keep them on hand because I actually use them year round, and I'll light one and I'll just make art for the time that it's lit. And it's usually about 45 minutes to an hour. And then I'm done making art when the candle goes out. And I feel like they're the little way I can bless whatever I'm creating or making that day.
I'm into it. So is there anything else that you would like to add to the interview?
Well, you mentioned you have a fruit nearby that you're going to consume, and I want to chat about it.
Yes, I have a. Do you know what this is?
Well, it looks like it could be a cherry moya. It's got a green, firm outside. And then
Well, it's kind of squishy. It's kind of squishy. And then when you slice it open, it has the white, fleshy, custardy apple fruit and then the black seeds on the inside. But there's a difference. The cherry moya has a much more gritty taste to it, and that there's more crystallized sugar towards the closer you get from the inside of the fruit, the fleshy part of the fruit, to the outside. But these ones that grow here, not too far away from where I'm currently staying, are perfect to the very end of the peel. It is, I've never experienced anything quite like it. And it's only available for like a few weeks and then it's done. That's it. And sometimes it's just two weeks or so. And when I landed, I went straight to Hotties, which is the Arab village across from Zehron. And I go up to the person and I'm like, do you have a nona? This is called a nona. And he basically said to me, and I don't know if he was pulling my leg or anything, but he's like, literally, I have 5 left. It's the end of the season. I was going to take it for my family. And I'm look, I have been waiting 8 years for this. If you don't mind, I would just like one. I haven't tasted this in a very long time. And then he pushed him forward this box, and he's like, "You need it more than me," which is very sweet. And I have. Well, this has been an absolute honor. I really would like to thank you, Erin-Kate Escobar, for joining JQT today as our first Hanukkah Hottie of 2022. Cannot believe Hanukkah's here. Be sure to follow their work on all the socials. Your website will also be listed in the event description so people can check you out at a later time. I would like to thank our sponsor organization, Creating Accessible Neighborhoods, as well as our community partner, LGBTQ at the J. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to JQT Hanukkah Hotties. Happy Hanukkah and Chag Hanukkah Sameach. Bye.
Hanukkah Sameach.